Midnight Secrets. The lonely rancher's dark promise to the beaten mother of three. The moon hung low and heavy over the dusty expanse of Thorn Valley, a ghostly light spilling off the peaks of jagged mountains like a troubled sigh. Underneath this eerie illumination, the chilling secrets of the rancher lurked, urging whispers through the ghost town's rocking shutters and creaking fences. There was something unsettling about the way the ranch loomed upon the horizon. It wasn't just the countless rumors that floated about it. No, it was the weight of an unspoken promise, dark and unfathomable, that clung tighter than the night mist wrapping around the world. It was said that Jacob Cole, the lonely rancher, had made a pact with the shadows, a promise so twisted and vile that it rippled like unseen waves through the town. A rumor had bled into reality, a promise made to a beaten mother of three. With cracked lips and desperate eyes, she showed up at his door, holding her children close, whispering words that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to listen. Folks said there was a deal struck, a sinister bargain sealed in the dead of night. The townspeople exchanged glances, wide-eyed murmurs passing between them. She looked like a wild animal, one man gulped, shaking his head, like she'd lost everything. There was fear etched across their faces, the kind that ties knots in your stomach. When the mother walked the dry streets, her breath quick and restless, her kids wide-eyed and silent at her side, a suffocating anticipation settled in the air. What could drive her to such a man? What did she seek in the darkness? Eyes glued to the clock in the saloon, they'd wait. When the clock struck midnight, life felt like it stopped, breaths were bated, and hearts hammered in chests like drums, for all knew that something would happen. A guttural scream, perhaps, or the unholy sound of a promise being fulfilled. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But the moon. Oh, that treacherous moon. It cast long shadows on the ground as if forming a portal to her deepest fears. Beneath its watchful gaze, whispers turned to eerie silence as if the world held its breath. When she finally stood at Jacob Cole's weathered door, knuckles ready to rap, the silence thickened, curling around her like a sinister fog. Did she know what she was about to unleash? The lump in her throat grew, the weight of her decision pressing down like the wrong kind of hope, and the unsteady tremor of her hand felt like fate itself. And then, just as it seemed the promise would reveal itself, a shot rang out. In the stillness of the night, the air split, and the ground trembled, leaving that single haunting question: what had she unleashed, and would they all pay the price? The shot pierced through the silence like a lightning bolt, electric and raw. A gasp echoed through the streets of Thorn Valley as the townsfolk froze, hearts pounding in rhythm with the echo of the gunfire. Some ducked behind dusty crates, others clutched friends or family, wide eyes locked onto the dark silhouette at the ranch. The night felt alive with tension, heavy as if the very air was charged with impending doom. Jacob Cole's ranch, once merely a shadow on the horizon, now loomed ominously, an impenetrable fortress holding secrets tighter than barbed wire. The mother stood there for a moment, paralyzed by the sound that split the air, her breath hitching as horror gripped her heart. Did it come from inside? Was Jacob a monster, just as the stories foretold? The children whimpered, instinctively turning toward her with fear playing on their faces. She quickly knelt down, wrapping her arms tightly around them, attempting to shield them from the reality that threatened to unfold. "Stay close," she whispered, voice trembling, an anchor of desperation against the rising tide of panic. Out in the town, the murmurs grew frantic. "What was that? Did you see? Someone is going to die tonight." They gathered in clusters, eyes painted with dread. Every clock in town ticked loudly in the stillness, creating a metronome of dread, counting down to something that felt inevitable. Would they witness a tragedy tonight? A flicker of movement drew their eyes to the ranch. A figure emerged from the darkened doorway of Jacob's house, silhouetted against the moonlight, a tall man with a wide-brimmed hat, his face obscured by the shadows. Jacob? Danger radiated from him like heat, stoking fears deeper than the night itself. He didn't move just yet, his presence alone sending chills through the onlookers like the wind stripping leaves from trees. As the mother stood paralyzed, realization washed over her, sticky and cold. She had come here seeking salvation, a lifeline to pull herself and her children from the abyss. But had she summoned something far darker instead? Her gut twisted painfully, and an instinctive need to flee gnawed at her. Unsure if she was ready to face the very man that could seal their fate, she hesitated. Suddenly, another shot. This one closer, sharper. It ricocheted off the walls like a gathering storm, a cruel reminder of the decision she had just made. The townsfolk had begun to scatter, fear sharpening their senses. Run! Get to the church! Someone yelled, shouting orders as panic spilled into the streets. Only a few remained, eyes wide, witnessing the unfolding chaos, securely tethered by morbid curiosity. They had to know the truth. But what truth awaited them? In the chaos, the children began to cry, their innocent sobs cutting through the mounting tension like a blade. She clutched them tighter, her heart racing faster than ever, sensing the darkness inching closer. Turning back toward Jacob's enigmatic figure, now stepping forward with an eerie calmness, she sensed the tempest brewing in the depth of his eyes, and then she caught his gaze, her heart sinking further. There was no kindness in those dark depths, only an unfathomable void, a warning unheeded. She stood, torn between the promise she had made and the man who seemed to embody the nightmares of the town. An anxious breath escaped her as the silence that followed held the weight of a decision yet to be made. Would she confront Jacob? Or leave behind the darkness that threatened to consume them all? As she hesitated, the moon hung in the sky, witnessing her fateful choice. And in that chilling instant, she whispered to herself. What if the truth was worse than the nightmare? But as the last echoes of fear swept through the valley, one thing became clear: the night was far from over. What they had all witnessed was just the beginning. The moment Jacob stepped forward, shadows clung to him like a shroud, drawing a collective breath of disbelief from the townspeople. A whisper of fear swept through the crowd as he moved, his boots crunching gravel, the sound stark against the whispers of the frightened townsfolk. Did you hear that? A man shouted, voice cracking and filled with urgency. The dread was palpable, a ghost that hovered above them all, threatening to engulf this small slice of their lives forever. The mother tightened her grip around her children, feeling their small bodies tremble against her side. Stay here, she breathed, though her own heart screamed for flight. In that moment, to run felt like betrayal, but staying meant facing a truth she could hardly fathom. Jacob, what had he done? And what darkness lay behind those haunted eyes? As if sensing her turmoil, Jacob's gaze flickered toward her, intensifying the air of menace that hovered. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice even, yet carrying the weight of a warning. His words wrapped around her like chains, anchoring her to the spot. For a chilling heartbeat, the world fell away, the gasping breaths of the children, the whispers of the crowd, all dimmed against the storm gathering in that one moment. I came seeking help, she said, surprising even herself with the strength that emerged. But it feels like I've walked into a nightmare. The words hung between them, suspended, waiting for an answer. Jacob's brow furrowed, and for a second, a flicker of humanity crossed his features, as if he too battled his own internal darkness. But that flicker was gone in an instant, replaced by a mask of stoicism as he surveyed the scene. There are things here that can't be unwound. Darkness speaks in whispers, and tonight it howls. With his words came another shot, this one echoing across the valley, shaking the very ground beneath them. The tension snapped. A woman screamed, pulling her children towards the safety of the church, their feet pounding against the dirt. Others began to retreat, feeling the dread suffocating their instincts to stay and uncover the truth. Get back! Jacob shouted suddenly, his voice cutting through the chaos. I won't let this valley bleed for my sins. What sins? The question escaped her lips before she could hold it back, laced with a desperation she couldn't contain. Once confident, her voice now trembled, raw with fear and anger. Jacob shifted uneasily, as if revealing his truth might peel away the layers of darkness festering inside him. He hesitated too long, and the piercing silence that enveloped them screamed louder than the gunfire. Suddenly, a raucous crash echoed from the ranch, followed by a low growl that bounced off the buildings, making the children flinch. The air thickened with an unsettling clarity. Something was coming. The mother's heart raced as she turned, instincts flaring wildly. "We have to go," she urged, but the shadows of Jacob's past seemed to pull her back. Which way led to safety? Amidst the chaos, a chilling laugh emerged from the ranch, sending a shiver down her spine. It was no human laugh, it was rough and jagged, cutting through the night like a jagged knife of ice. "Jacob," she uttered, terror knotting her stomach. "What have you done?" He didn't answer. The tension was thick as fog, the kind that clings to everything, constraining their every breath. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't just fleeing, she was running towards a truth that could unravel everything she thought she knew. As shadows loomed larger behind them and the stench of doom filled the air, one question loomed larger than the rest: what awaited them behind the walls of Jacob's ranch? What kind of horrors lay buried beneath layers of deceit and silence? The night bore witness to secrets that were about to awaken. And as a figure stepped into the moonlight, she felt an icy grip clasp around her heart. It was only the beginning. The figure emerging from the moonlight stood tall, a silhouette of menace and madness. It was wrapped in dark rags, its face obscured, but the glint of eyes shone like steel under the cold light. The laugh echoed again, louder this time, and the townspeople retreated, a wave of terrified whispers swelling behind them. "Run!" she screamed, panic lacing her voice. The instinct to protect her children surged within her, a desperate bid for safety against the unfolding horror. She reached for them, her fingers trembling, but her heart sank as they cowered against her waist. Fear gripped them too tightly. Jacob moved in front of her, a barrier between her and the encroaching terror. "You don't understand," he shouted at the figure. "Release them. You promised me." The shape laughed again, a jarring sound that sent fresh chills racing down the mother's spine. "Promises?" it hissed through cracked, dry lips. "What do promises matter when blood is the currency of the night?" Her heart thundered. The weight of the implications twisted her gut. What had Jacob promised? What was this nightmare that whispered in riddles around her? "Jacob," she pleaded, though her voice faltered under the weight of dread. "You need to tell me." He turned, his eyes reflecting the spectral moonlight, revealing a depth of sorrow and fear. "You should have left when you had the chance," he said, his voice cracking. "Now it's too late." Before she could respond, the figure lunged, its movements a blur, an embodiment of darkness sweeping towards Jacob. "You think I'll let you go that easily?" it snarled, clawed hands outstretched. "Get back!" Jacob shouted as he stepped forward, as if to shield her and the kids. The moment felt frozen in time. Her heart pounded as she watched him throw himself against the figure. They collided in a crash as loud as thunder, sending shocking reverberations through the ground. The mother's breath hitched as she grasped her children tightly. They needed to move. She could see the chaos unfolding, specters of panic sweeping through the remaining townsfolk who tried to flee. But how could she leave Jacob? "Mommy, please!" her youngest cried, eyes wide with fear. It was a plea that cut through her, raw, desperate. She had always been their protector, but now they were facing something beyond her comprehension. She made a split-second decision. Holding the hands of her children tightly, she urged them back, toward the cover of the church. The flickering candlelight peeked through the stained glass, casting muted colors across the lawn. "We have to go. Now." But her heart clenched at the thought of leaving Jacob behind. She shot a glance over her shoulder, catching a glimpse of him grappling with the figure. Each punch he threw seemed to reverberate with the weight of his sins. A shot rang out again, ricocheting off the ground, and the figure fell momentarily back, but it was only momentary, a mere pause in the onslaught. "Jacob!" She shouted one last time, tears brimming in her eyes. The sounds of chaos wrapped around her like a strangling vine. She couldn't let him die here, she wouldn't. But the children's small forms shook beside her, and instinct screamed for survival. "We have to move," she repeated as fear clawed through her, propelling her towards the church. Even as her heart screamed to stay. As she stumbled through the door, she felt an unsettling weight drop onto her shoulders. The night had swallowed them whole, and within it lay unknown horrors yet undiscovered. In that moment, she knew the darkness stretched beyond what she'd ever realized, but what awaited her in the church? Would the sanctuary truly be a safe haven, or just another chapter in a night spiraling into madness? The echoes of laughter lingered behind her, a promise of more nightmares to come. The church door slammed shut behind her, a solid finality that resonated in her bones. The warm flicker of candlelight danced on the walls, casting long shadows that seemed almost alive. She turned, her back against the sturdy door, heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. "Mommy, what's happening?" Her youngest whimpered, clutching her leg. A rush of tears threatened to spill over, but she forced a smile, bending down to hold his face in her trembling hands. "We'll be okay. Just stay close, please." The words felt hollow, even to her, as the chaos outside erupted anew. A thud echoed, accompanied by desperate cries that snaked their way into the sanctity of the church. Would it be enough? As she dragged her children further into the dimness, every flicker of light felt like a heartbeat, pulsing with their collective terror. The dark corners of the church creaked and sighed, shadowy forms creeping closer. Was there something lurking in the back, hidden behind the wooden pews? She squinted, straining to see. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely, the command more for her sake than theirs. Suddenly, a loud crash forced her heart into her throat. The door trembled under the weight of the night, as if something outside was testing its strength. She instinctively pushed her children behind a row of pews, praying they would blend into the shadows. The laughter, it was back, sharper now, like glass. It sliced through her nerves, threading through every flickering candle, sending shadows into a dance of horror. "Jacob!" she cried, barely aware of her voice breaking the tension, the name a lifeline in the chaos. Each raised laugh was punctuated by her frantic heartbeat. He was out there, battling a darkness she couldn't comprehend, and they were trapped here, exposed. A dull thud resounded, and she jumped, the children gasping quietly beside her. Footsteps sounded outside, a slow, deliberate rhythm that set her teeth on edge. The sound stopped, and dreadful silence enveloped them. She felt each breath of her kids, tiny, trembling gusts against her arm. The laughter faded, but not entirely, lingering as an undercurrent, a thread woven into the fabric of their fear. "We need to find a way out," she murmured, more to herself than any of them. This sanctuary was no such thing. It was a vessel of darkness, suffocating under its own weight. She cast around, searching for an exit, a bolt hole. Then a whisper floated in. "Help me." It threaded through the air, thin, wavering, mixing with the flickering flames. It wasn't loud, but in the suffocating quiet, it sliced her heart open. She felt drawn in, like a moth to a flame. Was it Jacob? The thought prodded her with urgency. "Did you hear that?" she asked her children, whose wide eyes reflected her own fear. They nodded, clinging even tighter, as if trying to merge into her being. A conflict rolled through her, the need to protect, to run, and the urge to help. Could she risk everything? The children were a living weight against her heart. The choice was unbearable. "Stay here," she whispered, brushing the hair from her daughter's face. "Don't move until I come back." And just like that, she turned, urgency igniting her veins. The church loomed larger as she stepped further from her children. Shadows enveloped her like a shroud, the air thick with despair, but she pressed on, drawn towards the haunting call. If Jacob was alive, if there was even a chance, but then a sudden crash echoed through the sanctuary, and she froze. The door they were coming in, what other horrors lay in wait, coiling in the dark? Would she find Jacob in time, or was it all a ruse? Restlessness surged in her, knowing that safety was slipping through her fingers. The laughter returned, ugly and mocking, swirling around her. The night was far from over, and she was about to learn just how deep the darkness ran. She held her breath, listening. Her heart raced as the ominous creaks of the door reverberated like a sinister countdown. It wouldn't hold them back for long. The whispers, tantalizing and frayed, pulsed from deeper within the shadowy recesses of the church. Every instinct screamed at her to head back to her children, but Jacob's voice echoed, caught between hope and desperation. "Stay strong," she whispered to herself, stepping cautiously through the dimness, where shadows writhed and whispered secrets only they could hear. The laughter crescendoed again, high and sinister like the chime of a breaking bell. It felt closer this time, digging into her resolve, clawing at her soul. With every heartbeat, anxiety constricted her chest. She reminded herself of the small, warm bodies she was fighting for. They depended on her. She had to find a way to Jacob. He needed her, and the thought of him being out there, lost in the night, pushed her forward. The flickering candles cast flickering outlines on the walls, twisting grotesquely. She stopped and strained her ears, hoping to catch the slightest sound of Jacob again. Instead, a heavy thud came from behind the door being battered by relentless fists. Her stomach lurched. "Mommy?" Her daughter's voice broke through the panic, a fragile, haunting plea. It made the pit in her stomach twist tighter. "Mommy will be right back," she called out, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. But she was trapped. The only way forward seemed to spiral into darkness. She could feel the shadows pulling at her as she crept deeper into the sanctuary, her skin crawling with the weight of something watching. The whisper returned, "Help me." A shiver ran down her spine. She couldn't tell if it was a figment of her mind or if something ethereal truly called for aid. But the urgency was real, drowning out her own instincts. Perhaps it was a trick, but what if it wasn't? Steeling herself, she took a cautious step towards the far end of the church. The whispers grew louder, warping into a chorus of sorrow, laced with something sinister. She needed to stay calm. Then came a cough, thick and ragged, from the shadows ahead. Her heart skipped as she approached, weaving between ruined pews and debris. "Jacob?" She called out tentatively. Nothing. Silence hung heavy, weighted like fog. Then it came again, a rustle more tangible this time, almost human. "Help me." The voice was clearer, begging. Tension coursed through her, a visceral fear gnawing at her resolve. She could retreat, head back to her children and the thin veneer of safety that clung to them. But Jacob's welfare gnawed at her, each moment of indecision like a wound. Before she could talk herself out of it, she ducked behind the last wooden pew. Out of the shadows, two figures emerged. One was crumpled, hunched over, the other looming a darkness cloaked in intent. Her breath hitched. It was unmistakable, the familiar soft curls of Jacob. But the figure towering above him was cloaked in shadows, its outline shifting as if it were part of the darkness itself. "Let him go!" She screamed, a desperate charge igniting in her heart. And for a split second, she thought she saw the shadow stiffen, its blackness spiking with surprise. In that moment, everything shifted. She felt the air crackle with danger. Would she save Jacob and then face the wrath of whatever lurked in the night? A deafening crash smashed against the door, and her heart pounded like a wild drum. She had to act, but with each flicker of candlelight, uncertainty tightened around her, an embrace far more ominous than the shadows surrounding them. What had she unleashed? And would it not only crave Jacob's life but demand her children's too? She had to know what lay ahead, but the clock was ticking before she could step forward. The shadowed figure turned, and in a chilling whisper said, "Do you really want to find out the truth?" Her breath caught, and she stepped back, but it was too late. Darkness closed in. She stumbled backward, the shadows swirling around her like a suffocating cloak. Panic clawed at her throat as she fought to find her footing. The air felt electric, laden with unspeakable dread. Jacob. Her voice pierced through the thick silence, frantic but determined. But all she received in return was the low laughter of the figure behind him, a taunted echo that chilled her bones. It wasn't just a shadow, it was something otherworldly, something that fed on fear and despair. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face that had no features, smooth skin endless in darkness, devoid of light or humanity. Jacob crumpled beneath it, his small body trembling. With a burst of adrenaline, she lunged forward, her heart racing. Get away from him. She could feel the fabric of her resolve fraying, but she refused to let it tear completely. She had to remind herself of her purpose, to take back Jacob, to restore the light to the darkness threatening to swallow them both whole, but before she could reach him, the shadow stretched out its hand. An unnatural chill swept through the air, making her freeze in place. It was as if the darkness had woven itself into reality, an inky magic binding her to the spot. Do you trust him? It spoke again, the voice thick like molasses, wrapping around her mind. Or do you trust yourself? Your love is powerful, but can it save him from what he has become? The question struck like a bolt of lightning. She felt both lost and exposed, as if every secret she harbored was laid bare for the shadow to devour. Images of her children flashed in her mind, their laughter brightening the heaviest days. How could she love so fiercely yet feel so utterly powerless? Her heart ached. He is my son. She cried. Your son, it whispered, mocking her belief. Is he still what he was? Or does the path lead to something darker? She could see Jacob through a haze, shaking uncontrollably. Mommy! He wailed, desperation laced in his voice. It broke her, shattering the illusion of safety she clung to. The shadow danced around him, like a serpent eager to strike. Jacob! She pleaded again, forcing herself to take a step forward. But the darkness tightened, suffocating her will. What will you do to save him? The shadow tilted its head, its voice now raspy with menace. Will you sacrifice one to save the other? Or is it easier to let go? Her mind raced, heart pounding like a war drum. What kind of choice was that? An impossible decision built on love and sacrifice, twisting her insides into knots. Could she sacrifice her own well-being for him, risk losing herself forever? What if she could never reach him? Mommy! Please! Jacob's voice shattered her reverie. It slipped through her fingers like sand, and the shadow laughed, a cruel, bone-chilling sound that echoed off the church's stone walls. In that moment, something flickered inside her, a spark of defiance ignited. She couldn't let darkness win. She had faced demons before, the haunting memories of the past, the sacrifices made. She would fight for Jacob, for her family. With a primal scream, she broke free of the shadow's hold, pushing through the thick fabric of darkness. Not today! She shouted, charging forward, ready to face whatever horror awaited, but as she reached for Jacob, a surge of energy rippled through the air, and the world around her erupted in chaos. The shadows twisted violently, encasing her in a whirlwind of despair. Do you truly wish to confront me? The figure growled, the words laced with the promise of suffering. The true horror awaited in the depths of her choice. Would her relentless heart be enough to pierce the veil of darkness? As the shadows closed in, she found strength within, unwilling to relent until an unbearable scream rang out through the church, freezing her in her tracks. Mommy! Could she survive the clash of that heart-wrenching call? Or would the darkness claim what she held most dear? She stood at the brink, on the cusp of revelation, teetering on the edge of despair. And in that moment, she asked herself, what sacrifices would she be forced to make to reclaim her son? The answers lay in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The shadows twisted around her, a living entity hungry for despair. As she charged forward, a fierce resolve surged within her, driving her toward Jacob. But the air crackled with a new fear, the weight of the mere thought of losing him almost more than she could bear. Mommy! Jacob's voice echoed again, desperation lacing every syllable. Each cry pierced her heart, urging her to fight harder. Panic ignited a fire deep inside, forcing her feet to move despite the suffocating grip of shadows trying to hold her back. "Jacob! I'm coming!" The words flew from her lips, raw and powerful. She had to reach him. But the darkness roared. "You think fighting will change anything? He is lost, and you will be too." With every step, the shadows wrapped tighter around her. She felt their cold touch stinging her skin, trying to pull her back into the abyss. A terrified scream rose in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She had to keep her focus, to push through. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her head. It felt like a vice squeezing her temples. She staggered, pressing a hand to her forehead as the world around her warped. Memories flared up, visions of moments that had once brought joy now twisted into painful reminders of her failures as a mother. Her breath came in gasps as darkness crept into those memories, each cherished moment tainted with shadows of doubt. "Is this what you want?" The figure taunted, reappearing just beyond her reach. "To relive the moments you couldn't protect him?" "No!" She screamed, her voice breaking. "I refuse to let you win." Each heartbeat echoed with determination. Her love for Jacob fanned the flames of her resolve, pushing the encroaching darkness further away. She couldn't give in. She wouldn't. With renewed strength, she lunged toward Jacob. The shadows wriggled like angry serpents, trying to ensnare her, but she fought back. She could see him, his frightened eyes staring back at her, filled with a mix of fear and longing. "Mommy!" Jacob cried again, a flicker of hope in his voice. Just then, the shadow grew angry. It drew closer, a swirling mass of darkness and rage. "You are foolish to think you can save him. There is no escape from the path he has chosen. Jacob, hold on!" She shouted, desperate to reach him before it was too late. She could feel the energy in the air crackle, like static before a thunderstorm. Then, she saw it. A tiny ray of light shone through the darkness, illuminating Jacob's face. It was hope, a sliver of possibility that pushed her forward. She envisioned her son as he had been, innocent, laughing, full of life. It fueled her urgency. "Believe in me, baby," she urged, feeling the warmth of that light wrap around her like a shield. "We'll find our way back together." With a mighty leap, she barreled forward, forcing the shadow back, even if just for a moment. The world around her contorted with anger, but she kept pushing. She was nearly there. As she reached for Jacob's small hand, the shadows surged again with a ferocious howl, engulfing her momentarily. "What will it be?" The shadow's voice grumbled, deceptively soothing. "Will you accept the darkness that waits? Will you trade your light for his safety?" The question hung in the air, cold and heavy. Her heart raced. Would she truly sacrifice everything to save him? What price would she pay to bring Jacob back to the surface? A sudden realization hit her like a breath of fresh air. It wasn't sacrifice if it was born out of love. She wouldn't yield to despair. But as she lunged forward again, a gripping sensation wrapped around her ankle, pulling her back. She looked down in horror, realizing just how much control the shadows had. "Mommy! Don't let it take you!" Jacob shouted, panic filling his voice as he reached out. And in that moment, she understood. The battle was just beginning. Would she dare sever the bonds of that darkness, or would it entwine them both, pulling them into the depths together? The answer loomed closer, hidden among the swirling chaos, and only one thing was certain: everything was about to change. The grip around her ankle tightened, sending jolts of panic flooding her veins. It felt like icy fingers clutching at her, dragging her into an unseen void. She looked up at Jacob, his face a mask of terror, and the energy between them sparked with desperation and love. "Mommy! Please!" he pleaded, his small hand reaching out toward her, stretching past the boundary of the dark surge that threatened to consume them both. The shadows hissed, their whispers clawing at her resolve, trying to drown out her connection to him. "No!" she screamed, summoning every ounce of strength within her. "I will not let you take me." Then, as if in response to her fierce defiance, the light surrounding Jacob brightened, illuminating the edges of the darkness. It bathed them in a warm glow, pushing back against the relentless shadows that swirled like a storm. Her heart raced, fueled by adrenaline and determination. She released her mind from the lies of failure, asserting firmly, "You don't control me." With one mighty effort, she tore herself free from the shadow's clutch, feeling the suffocating grip ease for just a moment. She surged forward, the light guiding her way like a beacon in a storm. "Mommy! I can't hold on much longer." Jacob's voice cracked, fear threading his words. "I'm almost there, baby. Hold on." She shouted back, feeling the warmth of hope washing over her. The darkness shrieked in anger, swirling violently, determined to reclaim their bond. She focused on Jacob, his frightened eyes bore into hers, and for that moment, they were anchored in each other's gaze. She could feel the love radiating from within the pure, untamed essence of a mother's heart, jumping over tendrils of shadow that darted and writhed underfoot. She pushed closer, imbuing each movement with unwavering determination. The shadows coiled higher, wrapping even tighter, their incessant whispers trying to drown her resolve. "Your love can't save him. You're just delaying the inevitable." They sneered, their voices like icy daggers stabbing through her confidence. Ignoring their taunts, she pressed on, her voice rising above the chaos. "Jacob, remember the stories I told you? How heroes never give up. That love conquers all. But what if that's not true?" Jacob asked, his voice quivering. Doubt seeped into the sound of his words, and it struck her like a punch to the gut. With that thought echoing in her mind, she faltered for the briefest moment. What if she couldn't save him? What if their love wasn't enough? But then she saw the flicker of light again, a reminder of laughter, play, and every moment that had brought them joy. "This isn't just my fight," she shouted, determination surging within her like a tidal wave. "This is our fight." The shadows recoiled slightly, hesitating as her fervor spilled into the air, igniting the thin space between them. But in that instant, the darkness lashed out again, furious at the thought of losing its grip. A massive tendril shot forward, wrapping around her waist, pulling her back with bone-chilling intensity. She could feel the jagged edges of despair slicing into her skin, the poison of hopelessness seeping into her mind. "Give in. Let the darkness take over." It howled, its voice a cacophony of torment. With her last breath, she mirrored Jacob's outstretched hand, reaching for him. "No. We're stronger than this. Together." His tiny fingers danced in the air, desperate to connect. Just as she felt herself giving way, a flash of light exploded, the boundaries of their world shifting. The shadows screamed, their hold starting to crack, splintering under the overwhelming force of her unwavering love, but just as they began to break free, a new figure emerged, hidden within the swirling chaos. A shadowy silhouette formed, larger than the others, its eyes gleaming with a cold, malevolent light. "No one escapes. Not while I exist." It snarled, a promise of despair enveloping them both. Her heart pounded in her chest, the real battle had only just begun. The shadow's presence loomed larger, and she had to wonder what darkness lay behind its eyes. Would she and Jacob ever truly break free, or were they destined to crumble under their burden? As the air thickened with tension, she realized that sacrifices would need to be made. The ultimate question remained, though: would she be willing to face the depths of her own darkness to save her child? The shadows recoiled as a blinding light burst forth, illuminating the dark corners of the church. She felt their grip crack, diminished by the fire burning within her heart. "This is our fight," she shouted, echoing her strength towards Jacob. It was a reminder of the love they shared, a testament to the unbreakable bond between a mother and a child. "Mommy!" Jacob cried, his voice laced with both fear and trust. The shadows writhed, hungry to consume them, but a spark of defiance ignited between them. She felt him reaching for her, every ounce of that childlike faith offering her strength. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." She screamed back, her voice cutting through the deafening darkness. And she lunged forward, every fiber of her being pushing against the weight of despair trying to reclaim them. As she closed the distance, the looming figure materialized larger, menacing, eyes like burning coals, dripping with malice. "No one escapes. Not while I exist." It bellowed, the very essence of darkness personified. Time slowed, and every heartbeat echoed in her ears. "You may haunt this valley, but you won't take my son." With renewed determination, she charged forward. The shadows lashed out, entangling her legs like vines, but she fought through the pain. Jacob's cries fueled the fire in her chest. "I won't abandon you." The air crackled with energy as their love collided with the shadows. She could feel the warmth of hope radiating, pushing back against the freezing touch of darkness. Each step forward ignited memories, laughter, cuddles, the warmth of his little hands in hers. They were enough to dissolve the choking fear. "Together," she urged, holding tightly to the light their love had forged. As if understanding her resolve, the light around Jacob brightened, illuminating the clutches of darkness that sought to ensnare them both. The looming figure sneered, and she felt a cold dread wash over her. "You think you can change him?" it hissed, shadows writhing ominously. "He belongs to the abyss now." But she surged forward and, with one final leap, grasped Jacob's outstretched hand. Their fingers entwined, a jolt of warmth surged through them, a connection stronger than any darkness. "Mommy. I'm scared." Jacob gasped, his trust in her palpable. "No. You're not alone. You're with me," she declared fiercely, weaving the magic of her love through their bond. It pulled them closer, strength swelling like the tide, pushing against the dark. With that, light broke through like dawn after a storm, surrounding them in a radiance that banished the darkness momentarily. Jacob's terrified eyes flickered with something new, not fear, but determination. "I love you," he cried, and the vulnerability in his voice tore at her heart. "Then let us make it count," she shouted, channeling every drop of power she had into their connection. It was time to fight back, to reclaim not just Jacob but their very selves. Shadows recoiled in horror, the towering figure shrieked, and she felt its power begin to wane. In that moment, she understood, love was the most potent weapon against despair. She was ready to face whatever came next. The darkness battled fiercely, but she wouldn't back down. "We're stronger than you," she cried, her voice rising above the chaos like a rallying cry. With a trembling hand, she unleashed that love, focused the light as the shadows lunged. It burst forth like a beacon, an explosion of warmth that illuminated the church, pushing back against despair inch by inch. The air filled with the soft, shimmering light, creating a barrier against the malevolent presence. "Now, Jacob," she urged, and he nodded, understanding the call to action. They took a step toward the light together, shoulder to shoulder, unified against the swirling chaos. "Mommy," he roared, emboldened by their connection. "Together," she shouted. In synchrony, their voices melded, an anthem of life, defiance, and hope, colliding against the shadows one last time. The darkness shrieked as the light surged, engulfing everything. When the dust settled, silence replaced the chaos, a heavy but serene stillness. She felt heavy, exhausted, but above all relieved. As she looked around, light streamed through the windows, illuminating the once dark corners of the church. Jacob stood beside her, his small hand clasped tightly in hers, his breath steadying. "Did we win?" he asked, eyes wide, searching hers. "Yes, sweetheart. We did," she managed, a lump in her throat choking her words. They had fought and prevailed, not just against the shadows, but against the fears lurking within themselves, but there was more work to do. "We have to help others, too. There are still those in darkness." Her heart raced at the thought of the townsfolk, all those who bore the scars of that terrible night. Jacob nodded, determination shining in his eyes. Yeah. We can't let them be alone. And just like that, the weight of the entire town settled around them, a reminder of the struggles they had all faced. They could finally confront those shadows lingering in Thorn Valley together. They stepped outside into the gentle morning light, drenched in warmth. The horizon was flooded with soft colors, beautiful and fresh after the storm of the night, a promise of new beginnings. Jacob looked up at her with a smile that lit his face. "Mommy, we can do anything together." "Yes, we can," she replied, her heart swelling with pride and love for the cure they had forged together. As they walked into the new day, leaving despair behind, she could only hope that their journey of healing had truly just begun. With her son beside her, the rush of possibilities filled the air, a hope reborn, and with it, the promise of brighter days ahead. Now together, they would face whatever came next, hand in hand, heart to heart. No darkness could extinguish a love so strong. You need to subscribe now to join us on this journey of hope and redemption. You won't want to miss what's next. Smash that like button to support us right now, it makes all the difference. And flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about our brave mother and her son. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Let us spread the love.